This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We've got a culturing process, a fermenting process, an aging process. So the butter will taste very different than, I guess, the average supermarket butter. I like to say we make butter makers butter. Like, this is the sort of butter makers would like to eat, simply because of the slow process in which we ferment and age and get the flavour into it. You know, the natural fermentation that gets all the flavours into the cream, and then once you churn it, you end up with this really rich, flavoursome butter that evolves and changes because it's a live culture that's in the butter as well.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
Listen to your customers, however you can do that. You've got to engage with your customers, and you've got to listen to what they're saying, and you've got to evolve and change. Unfortunately, what you love isn't always what the people want.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The east coast of Australia is dotted with the most wonderful seaside towns. As our appetite to explore Australia increases, so too has the appetite of professionals to leave the cities and raise the bar for regional dining. And it's creating a regional voice in food like we've never seen before. Scott Price is the owner and chef of Yellowtail restaurant in Terrigal, New South Wales. Scott, how are you?
Good, thanks, Huck. Yourself?
I'm good. Terrigal is the escape location for people in Sydney when they want to get away in summer. What was the drive for you to choose that location for a restaurant?
Look, I worked for many years for a fellow named Gary Skelton up on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, where I'm from. And he sort of, imparted his wisdom over the years to me about business and hospitality businesses, and sort of the need to be not too far from a capital city, within an hour, is what he always sort of advised, which is sort of what he did. He went from Sydney an open season in Noosa and did really well, and then I worked for him at Harvest in Coolum. So his idea was that you couldn't be too far from the capital or a capital. So I didn't really feel that Queensland needed what I had to offer. So I looked further afield, and Terrigal is about an hour, just over an hour from Sydney. So I thought, just jumped in the ute, drove down and had a look, and that's what I've come up with.
Well, what attracted you to Terrigal once you got there? And what was it like, the food scene for you?
Look, Terrigal sort of has its fine dining restaurants, has a strong cafe culture. It has its few fine dining restaurants, but I guess there's sort of the kind of fine dining restaurants that you can find anywhere, really. They don't really have anything unique about them. Nice enough oceanfront places, but I thought Terrigal could use something a little bit different. I thought that there was a clientele for something, I guess, a little bit more modern, a little bit more city, I suppose, would be how I describe what we do. Just a little bit more forward thinking, I suppose. And I mean, we've got a tiny space realistically, and no sort of ocean front or anything like that. But we sort of make up for it with interesting food and good service and an interesting wine list. So we sort of make up for not having the view and just being in a small side street, hole in the wall, really. We sort of make up for it in those other ways.
Were there challenges when you first opened up in bringing sort of this sort of elevated experience to the region?
Not really. I think, I think people were ready for it. I think they were crying out for it. It certainly took a little while to organically build a bit of a following. I think we had, the people that were ready for it, the real foodies, they jumped on board very early. But, to sort of have a successful business, you sort of need more than that, really. You need to kind of endear yourself to a whole broad market, really, to be busy all of the time. So, I guess the second stage took a little bit more time, a little bit more time and a little bit more effort into, letting people know what we did and what we're about. And yeah.
You mentioned you grew up on the Sunshine Coast. Well, take us back to that time. What sort of role did food play for you in your family?
Well, growing up, I actually, I come from a farming background out in sort of off the coast a bit, out in the Darling Downs. So, we sort of grew up growing grain and stuff like that. Fairly traditional family, I guess. So, I guess, food at home, mum's a great cook, but food at home really revolved around what Dad wanted to eat, which was usually sort of, well done steak and chips and peas and stuff like that. But, we had treat meals as well, like most Australian families, spaghetti bolognese and stuff like that was always a favourite. Mum was a great cook, but I think she was sort of a bit limited by what Dad wanted to eat.
When did you first start getting interested in food as a potential career?
Look, like a lot of young men, especially in the country, I kind of began to flunk out of school a little bit towards the later years. So university kind of really got taken off the table for me. And I guess around the same time, I kind of learnt a bit more about myself and that I was probably, more a creative person, I guess, than an intellectual type sit down and study and do exams kind of person. So, for me, and because I had loved food, it was really just a natural progression. I had enjoyed, reading cookbooks and coming up with dishes and having that creative side. So really just as I got towards the end of school and things weren't going well on a study level, I sort of started to look at it as a career.
Take us back into the kitchen when you first started in commercial kitchens. Well, do you have any stories from that time?
Oh, look, I did my apprenticeship in at the casino on the Gold Coast. Actually, I went there as straight out of school, and it's quite overwhelming, I guess, for a young kid to walk into a place like that. I mean, you're talking about a few hundred chefs and a real sort of institution. The place was at the time, had its whole in-house sort of apprenticeship system and teachers, and it was, I guess, as my first real workplace, it was pretty overwhelming. But I stuck it out there, and realistically, it gave me a great foundation because it really, you're talking about maybe 20 kitchens in that place. So you really covered the whole gamut of cookery, really. And a lot of it was sort of based on the old school, kind of hierarchy and all of that sort of stuff. And you had all the traditional sections like garde-manger and saucières and all of that sort of stuff. And then you had your fine dining restaurants, which, at that time they were quite good restaurants. So, I think it was pivotal in my career. I think it gave me a really good foundation. But, I probably say this to other people, I think you learn just as much in the first few years out of your apprenticeship than you really do in your apprenticeship. Once I went sort of further afield and started to take on, bigger roles and stuff like that, I learnt a lot.
What were some of the key venues and moments as you built your career?
Look, I went overseas and worked in London as most of us did at that time. I ended up working for Sally Clarke in London. Probably not well known in Australia, but certainly over there, she's kind of the doyenne of modern Mediterranean cooking. She's been there for 35 years, I think now. So she's had her restaurant there, and she's got a little chain of sort of gourmet delis, I suppose you call them, cafe shops. And just I guess when I went there, really, I just relearned everything. I relearned how to do it properly. It was simple food, but the level of precision involved in the prep work and the cooking of the fish and the cooking of the meats and just the cutting precision that they really required there. It really made me go back and relearn everything I'd learnt. Really learnt how to do things properly, I think.
Having grown up on a farm in Queensland, what was it like for you living in London?
I liked it. I loved it. To be honest, I don't think I was a very good country boy. I don't think it was. I couldn't wait to leave Dalby, the Darling Downs. To be honest, I wasn't really cut out for the place. I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to live in the cities and see the world. So, it was definitely an eye opener. And it did become a bit much after a certain period of time. I don't think you can live in London forever. I sort of ended up moving to Edinburgh after that, and ended up starting a small fish restaurant pretty similar to what I do now, with a caterer that I was working for. He had a small gallery space about the same size as what Yellowtail is now. And so when I'd sort of come with the background of working at Sally Clarke's, he jumped on that, and we opened that little fish restaurant called Big Fish, and, it sort of opened to rave reviews, and it was just flat out the whole time we were there. And, again, it was just providing an experience that the people in Edinburgh didn't really have. Again, Edinburgh, you sort of have casual places and then very fine dining places and nothing in between. And I guess my forte really is small bistro style restaurants and just with, I guess, more interesting food, or sort of, using powerful flavours and stuff rather than, boring sort of fine dining food. So, it kind of worked the same as what Yellowtail does. It was kind of appealing to a market that was there, and it was a great success. And unfortunately my visa expired and I had to come home.
Well, you returned home and joined Gary Skelton at Season. You mentioned he was a bit of a mentor. What sort of influence did that time there have on you?
With Gary, from a food point of view, again, it was just reinforcing those ideas that I already had about, that a good restaurant doesn't have to be sort of tepid, cold, mucked around with food. You could be busy and fast and fresh and just, and simple and people would love that. That's what I learned from him from a food point of view. But I think with Gary, it was more about, just operating a business, and trying to motivate the people around you. I ended up being his head chef at Harvest, and Gary sort of made a lot of money out of Season when he sold there, so he didn't really have to work a lot. He still did, he worked 3 or 4 days a week, but he always had a head chef, and it was just a just learning from him about running a small business, running a hospitality business, trying to motivate the people around you, trying to get people to take responsibility for making it happen. I think I learnt, as much about the business side of things as I did about food.
What's some of the key things that you need to focus on when you're running a small business like a restaurant like yours?
Look, I think you have to accept that it's an ever-changing thing. You've got to remain on the front foot. You've got to solve a lot of problems. You've got to solve a lot of problems without getting overwhelmed and forgetting, why you got into it in the first place. We're nearly at 6 years at Yellowtail, and, I wouldn't say it's been smooth sailing the whole time. There's a lot of challenges, without even discussing the last 2 years with COVID. But, there's always challenges. It's just about rolling with the punches, taking notice of what people say, just using reviews to your advantage. We're very fortunate at Yellowtail that we really only get good ones, but if we do get any that are slightly less than favourable, then I kind of use that with the staff, and we sort of discuss anything openly, and we kind of really utilise them. We don't take them to heart, but like I say, we are very fortunate that they're overwhelmingly positive. But we sort of use that stuff. Yellowtail's from the outside, it's a very small restaurant, but we've got 20 staff. We're very busy 7 days a week. It looks like a tiny hole in the wall 30-seater, but when you're doing sittings and turning over tables, and you've got an outside area, it's and you're just running over a 7-day week, it adds up, and we've been pretty fortunate to be busy, and I have staff that really take responsibility now. Obviously, when I started, it was really a very small team, and I was the chef, and I kind of it was really only 2 or 3 of us in the kitchen, very small kitchen, and that was great. I loved that. I got to basically have my hands on every plate of food that went up, so I knew what was going out was great, and if it wasn't, then it was my fault. I would have to fix it. But that was a different business back then. We're a hell of a lot busier, and I have a head chef and sous chef and a few other chefs, and we've got a full front of house team, and my role certainly has changed a lot. My role now is really just about the overall picture, and trying to just make sure they're all doing the right things, and that they're motivated to do the right thing, or to look after the customer, which is really, I guess, what we've always focused on. We without the customer, you don't have a business, and we've always been very customer focused. So it's just about getting my guys to realise that, if we don't look after them, they're not going to look after us.
You mentioned a bit earlier about the seafood restaurant in the UK, and there's a real seafood focus at Yellowtail as well. What's the interest and drive for the seafood offering?
Look, I guess when I came to town, there wasn't really one. There wasn't really a strong seafood offering or fish offering. The places around town, they sort of have the tendency to put a bit of farmed barramundi or salmon on the menu, and we're right on the beach in Terrigal, and we have some great fishermen who operate out of here and nearby. I thought that was a real shame, to be honest. Pulling a bit of farm barramundi from North Queensland or salmon from, Tasmania, I think that's a bit of a crying shame, really. We've always worked pretty close with our seafood suppliers. We had Tony Wern, who, buys the fish for St. Peter. He approached us because he's in Newcastle, and he was going down to buy all the fish for St. Peter every morning anyway, and then coming back to Newcastle. So he came and saw us and said that he wanted to buy our fish for us. So, we've had that relationship now for a few years, and Tony's not a guy that just goes and buys any old bit of fish. He knows where it comes from. He knows who the fishermen are. New South Wales, obviously, it's a bit of a system where almost everything goes through Sydney market, whether it's fished here or not, and then we sort of get it back from them. But it's a great relationship. We know what's good. We treat it a little bit better. We don't cook the crap out of it. And I think people appreciate that. You got to have a fine touch with fish, I think. Otherwise, it's a bit of a waste of time.
Is there a fish of the region that you love cooking, and is there a way that you love cooking that you can tell us about?
Well, look, obviously we named the restaurant after Yellowtail kingfish. So, we use that when it's good and in season. It's a bit of a tricky fish because if you fish for it any further south, any further north from Sydney, the warmer water, basically there's a toxin that is created in the fish, so it's really hard to use. You've got to fish from the south coast, but yeah, we use that in season. Obviously, a lot of yellowtail kingfish is farmed in Australia, which is a great product as well. But we can get the wild stuff in season off the coast here, so we use that when it's in. We use a lot of bass groper from the south coast, and it costs us a bit of money, but again, it's we just like to use those things when they're in season, and they eat really well, and it's about 1,000,000 times better than eating a piece of farm barramundi.
The success of Yellowtail has given you the foundation to open another venue, which is on the cards for next year. Is there a bit you can tell us about? Yeah,
look, obviously we've done pretty well in Terrigal. I think it's getting busier and busier. There's a lot of new buildings going up, so we sort of got an opportunity to go into a new building, a new build. Yellowtail's great, and we'll keep running Yellowtail. Like I say, I've got a lot of staff there, and they take care of it. So, but it's sort of in a very old building. So, with the new buildings going up in Terrigal, I jumped on an opportunity to get a new shell there. So we'll fit that out during the first 6 months of next year. And look, we'll sort of focus on the modern Asian kind of thing there, and probably go a little bit more casual. I think really in Australia, those sort of good but casual modern Asian places, they all seem to do very well, and that is, those Asian flavours are really what I do best, what I know the most about. And look, over the years, Yellowtail has probably morphed a little bit more Asian than I would have really liked, and that's just mainly because that's sort of the cuisines that inspire me. But, Yellowtail is sort of fine dining, and it'll sort of remain on that kind of eclectic menu. But yeah, we'll just really hone in on those sort of Southeast Asian and Japanese flavours at the new one, and just bring bring it back a notch in price and in in style, so that it has a fairly broad appeal, I suppose. Sort of family friendly and approachable for a younger crowd. I think Terrigal has had a fairly decent migration of Sydney-siders in the last couple of years trying to escape the city. A lot of people can work from home now, and they kind of have moved up here and they choose to work from here, and there's a lot of young professionals in that kind of set. So I think it's kind of time. It's time for Terrigal to have something that's, it's still good food, certainly a step above any sort of Thai restaurant or anything around, but, just at a very approachable kind of level.
Given the circumstances of the last couple of years, international travel is not on the cards for many, but regional travel really is. Well, what do you love about the region that you're in, and what should people expect if they come there?
Oh, look, it's really is an amazing place. We've got all the Buoyed National Park, great walks, amazing coastline, really, really good beaches. The Brisbane water, massive area of sort of sheltered water for boating and water sports and stuff like that. Some amazing hidden beaches and walks and great camping, and it really is geographically an amazing place, just with the national park and stuff, and it really is. It's so close to Sydney. I think, yes, we're regional, but I think we're probably the closest region to Sydney. You can jump on the train to Gosford, get here in an hour from Central. You can jump in the car and you can get out here in an hour as well, as long as you don't hit the traffic. But, look, it's, I love living here, for me, it's sort of about that Brisbane water. I have a boat and I fish myself, and I can't think of, anywhere I'd prefer to be.
The last couple of years have been challenging for many, but what's it been like for you in a regional area? Has it changed what you do?
Well, for sure, yeah. I think everybody's had to change what they do. From a big picture point of view, we've really, I guess, been a lot busier. Obviously, nobody can go overseas, and a lot of people have migrated here, and a lot of people are visiting here instead of overseas. Yeah, look, we just had to think on it. I just had to think on my feet a lot and just roll with the punches. But we stuck with it, We sort of I kept all my guys employed. A lot of others around the place sort of didn't do that. I kept everybody employed. We did take away the first time around. And did pretty well out of it. It just really kept everybody, all my guys engaged with us, and kept them with the salary, and kept the public engaged, really. We're pretty strong on social media about our takeaway and what we were doing, and it's obviously it's not really our forte, because it is, for want of a better description, we are a fine dining restaurant, so it's not exactly easy to translate into a takeaway kind of offering. But we did it. We did that the first time around. We did all right, and then once we were allowed to open and we knew we were going to be busy, because everybody's been cooped up for so long, then we were kind of ready to go and make the most of it, because we kept all the staff. So, and we did the same thing the second time around. We sort of did it a little bit differently. We kind of did, we just did takeaway on a Saturday but then we just built it up so that we ended up, I mean, we're a 30-seat restaurant, but we were doing 250 people takeaway on a Saturday out of, you know, a 5 square metre kitchen. And, we had boxes and bags and everything spread through the restaurant. So, we really had to change everything, really. I mean, that's the short answer. We changed everything. We had to pivot very quickly. And, for me, it was all just about keeping the staff employed because, we can't do it without them. And we really wanted to make sure, I knew it wasn't going to last forever, and I know maybe it's not over yet, but I knew it wasn't going to last forever, and you have to be ready to go when you're ready to go. And I didn't want to get rid of any of my guys. I've sort of spent a long time working with them, and they've become a really amazing asset to my business. So it was really important to me that we didn't lose them.
There's been a lot of professionals and moving to regional areas and opening restaurants. Do you have any advice on how to make a success of it?
Listen to your customers, however you can do that, you've got to engage with your customers, and you've got to listen to what they're saying, and you've got to evolve and change, I mean, a lot of young chefs probably think they know everything. I've certainly been there in the past as well. And unfortunately, what you love isn't always what the people want, so you really have to just engage with the public, engage with your locals, engage with your customers, and evolve. Yellowtail's evolved a lot over the 6 years that we've been here. So I think it's really important, and don't get overwhelmed. There's a lot of moving parts to a restaurant, and probably a lot more than you sort of see from the outside looking in. But and a lot of it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of checks that you have to do, but it's sort of it gets better, it gets easier. And, if you're passionate about what you do, stick with it, and you'll get where you want to go.
What is it that you love about what you do?
Look, I'm a creative person, I mean, I don't, I love working in the kitchen, but, I'm in my 40s now, and it's kind of a young man's game, but I liked being creative when I was in the kitchen every day. I still want to remain creative now, and I think that's a bit of a key for people who are chefs. And, there's been a little bit of there's been a little bit of talk out in the industry about whether chefs really get paid as much as, their tradespeople, friends and stuff like that. But what I would sort of say is, and I think it's getting better. I think chefs are fairly well looked after these days. But, it's a creative field, and you get a lot of reward from that. I think if you're a creative person, and obviously fitting out this new venue is kind of, where I'm sort of being creative and coming up with a new sort of, a new idea and trying to visualize that and get that to come to life. That's kind of how I sort of am creative now. And look, I still have input in the menu at Yellowtail, but again, we've got 6 chefs there now, so they sort of, they all have input, and I don't think they would want to do it if they didn't have to, they don't want to go in every day and cook my food, I think that's part of the good part of being a chef, is being able to create the dishes and have people love them, so that's why I do it. That's what I love about my job. It's a creative field, but it's a creative field that has, I guess, a real, there's an end result to it.
Well, Scott, it's an absolute pleasure to have you today on Deep in the Weeds. have a great summer. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Righto. Thanks very much, Huck.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.